Former Packers president Bob Harlan passed away on Thursday as one of the most consequential people, not just in Packers history, but in NFL history.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you get podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Wherever you get podcasts, you'll find Locked On Packers, the number one Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened. They want to know why and how, thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you here on the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one sports podcast network. Today's episode brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. We're going to talk about a trade I love that the Packers could make. We're going to talk about the Packers' interest in linebackers on today's show. But we're going to start in a place that is not going to make this video go viral. That is not going to make this podcast one of the most listened to podcasts in Locked On Packers history. But that's the point. Because Bob Harlan, at 89 years old, passed away. Former Packers president, Bob Harlan. And we could not start this show after that happened anywhere but with a man who ought to have a statue outside the halls of 1265 Lombardi Avenue. Because what he did for the Green Bay Packers reverberates around the NFL. It is easy for Packer fans of a certain age, Packer fans, really frankly, any younger than I am, to miss what happened here. Because for the last 30 years, the Packers have been one of the preeminent franchises in the NFL. But that doesn't happen without the stewardship of Bob Harlan. One of the great Super Bowl teams ever, the 96 Packers, does not happen without Bob Harlan. One of the most iconic players in NFL history, even if he's not the best quarterback ever, does not happen without Bob Harlan, and then probably does not give rise to one of the players of his generation in the Green Bay Packers organization, but not just in the Green Bay Packers organization. He happened to be in the Packers organization because of what was ultimately set forth by Bob Harlan. This is not hyperbole, folks. This is the truth. The Packers in the 70s and the 80s, coming off the foundational run in NFL history with the founding with Curly Lambeau and through the 50s and 60s with Vince Lombardi. They wandered in the wilderness for 25, 30 years. The Packers in the 70s and the 80s were a joke. They were barely a viable NFL franchise. They were bad. And perpetually so. But Bob Harlan comes in and changes all of that. Now, he doesn't get credit for everything, right? Like he can't take credit for, Reggie White deciding that God told him he needed to be a Green Bay Packer. He can't take credit for that. But he was someone who has been in this organization. He started on the football side in Green Bay in the 70s. Assistant to the general manager, assistant to the president, becomes the president and CEO in 1989 and is the president until 2006. Ron Wolf, Mike Holmgren, Brett Favre, that sets the table for Ted Thompson. That sets the table for Brian Gutekunst. That sets the table for Mike McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers and Charles Woodson and everything that transpires after that and regains the prestige of one of the seminal organizations in pro sports. The Green Bay Packers are only the Green Bay Packers now today because of the resetting of the franchise that Bob Harlan architected in all of this. It is mind-boggling to me how his role in the history, not just, again, of the Packers, but of the NFL, regularly goes unnoticed. And he was a football guy, right? Like, worked in the Packers front office. Harlan hired Ted Thompson, the architect of the 2010 Super Bowl team. He made sure this kept going. Now, there were some lean years in there with Mike Sherman, to be sure, but like, this doesn't work if not for Bob Harlan. I had a chance to talk with Mr. Harlan. This is probably 10 years ago now. And he lit up when I asked about Mike Holmgren and the 96 team. I mean, still someone, you know, I guess not as late in his life as he ultimately became, but he was a man in his 70s, late 70s, early 80s. I don't know exactly what the timeline was. And he just loved this team, loved this organization, and loved the people. Coach Jags on our squad show talked about the interactions that he had with Bob Harlan. Jim Nagy, former executive at the Senior Bowl, who used to be a scout for the Packers, when he was an intern, the lowest man in the building, Bob Harlan took an hour out of his day to talk to, you know, a 22-year-old kid. That's the kind of person he was. That's the kind of manager he was. And he set this team up for the success that they had in the mid-90s. He took them from Milwaukee, which, you know, Milwaukee fans didn't love, but it was ultimately the best thing for the organization. The ties to Milwaukee, which, by the way, if you go back in Packers history, 100 years, Curly Lambeau thought that the team would not be able to survive in Green Bay, that they had to be moved to Milwaukee. The fan base in Milwaukee was not the same as it was in Green Bay. Putting all of the games at Lambeau was a big deal. They were losing money playing in Milwaukee. He made sure they were playing their games in Green Bay. He oversaw the completion of the Don Hutson Center, where the Packers practice to this day. He oversaw the expansion of Lambeau Field, Packers Pro Shop, the Hall of Fame. All of this in the smallest market in American sports. He showed it works in Green Bay. And not just it works, it can thrive in Green Bay. And Oklahoma City does not happen in the NBA without Green Bay reinvigorating itself. Like, I understand they played some games there and they thought, oh, there's something here. It doesn't work if the smallest market team in the NFL isn't a two-time Super Bowl champion in the modern era. Four-time Super Bowl champion overall. It doesn't work. Because Green Bay is the model. Teams with owners started to envy and copy what the Packers have been doing for decades now because of Bob Harlan. His son, Kevin Harlan, who I've also had a chance to talk to and get to know. I'm lucky to get to say that. Still broadcasts the preseason games. One of the best broadcasters we have, frankly, does NBA, does NFL. NFL for Westwood One, Monday Night Football. I mean, he's in his 60s. Still doing it with the same verve he's always done it with. The Packers got a gift with Bob Harlan. And they should give the gift back as best they can and put a statue of him in front of Lambeau Field. All right, let's talk football. We'll do it next on Locked On Packers. We live in a world where you can stream anything, order food in a minute, and carry some supercomputers in our pockets. And somehow buying tickets to a live game still feels like pulling teeth. Hidden fees, jumping prices, endless steps. There has to be a better way. That's why I use the Game Time app. It gives fans the advantage and makes getting tickets simple, whether it's NFL games, concerts, comedy, whatever you're into. You can see panoramic views from your seat before you buy. The price you see includes the fees. No surprises at checkout. 2 taps and you can have great seats. Fast, easy, done. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Free agency is here and so are we. Get 1 month of the Everydayer Club with code FREEAGENCY. No spaces now through March 15th. Go ad-free and keep the conversation going on Discord in the group chat. Join the club. LockedOnPackers.supercast.com or click the link in the show notes for more. We talked about the Tom Silverstein article last week, the information about Rich Bisaccia, but in there was a nugget about the Packers checking in with Quay Walker and teams that might have linebackers available in free agency. I've heard that includes Devin Lloyd, who's likely going to get paid at the top of the market, but also likely going to be going back to Jacksonville. If not, it's going to be for $20+ million in the free agent market. Linebacker happens to also be a stacked position in this draft. Arvell Reese at the top of the draft is, maybe he's an off-ball linebacker, maybe he's not. It sounds like he could do both. Sonny Styles is a true off-ball linebacker, but there may be some teams that see those physical traits and go, maybe he can do more than just play off the ball. Maybe you can use him as a situational pass rusher. Maybe he could be Micah Parsons with the physical traits that he has. I mean, S tier, capital S, underscore, italicized, bolded, subhead 3, whatever. He's got that elite athleticism. And that's not just the first round guys. There's second round guys, there's third round guys, there's fourth round guys that the Packers could be interested in. But this goes back to the point that we made the other day about Brian Gutekunst not being able to go into the draft feeling like he has to do anything. You really have to sign one of these or trade for one of these linebackers to make this defense work before the draft, because the linebacker is a tough position. It takes time with linebackers. It took Devin Lloyd, who's going to get $20 million on the open market, it took him 3-4 years to get it together. And then you get it together and you've got, a really impactful player. But the Packers, if Edgerrin Cooper is or isn't going to play Mike, it doesn't matter. They need another linebacker. Someone else has got to play next to him. So where can you find one? Brian Gutekunst talked at the combine about adding competition to the linebacker room. Well, you don't know when you go into the draft if you're going to be in a position to draft a player who can help you like that. Now, when you stack the board, The impact on your team affects the way that you stack the board. It's not just like, okay, highest grade to lowest grade. It doesn't quite work like that. Teams act like it works like that, but it doesn't. And these are human beings. They know what the team needs. And so you're going to look, if you have a tiered board, whatever it is, okay, you got two players next to each other. They're of similar grade. Well, the position that you need more is that's going to take precedence, generally speaking. There are cheap linebackers to sign. There are middle-class linebackers to sign. There are upper middle-class linebackers. There are, working-class linebackers to sign. There's plenty of options. The Bears just released Tremaine Edmonds. That could be another option. Nakobe Dean is a former Philadelphia Eagle who played for Jonathan Gannon. Matt Milano is a former Buffalo Bill whose contract voids when the new league year starts. He's going to be a free agent. He played for Bobby Babich. Plenty of options out there, but my assumption, like if you gave me one position where I was sure they're going to sign someone this offseason, it would be the linebacker position. I think corner would be right there too. But linebacker, they just need more bodies there. Like they just don't have the guys. And Isaiah McDuffie is a nice football player. I don't think he's ideally suited to what the Packers need from him. But if you have Isaiah McDuffie and Edrin Cooper, Quay Walker goes out the door and Tyron Hopper, that's three. We don't know what Tyron Hopper is. Now the Packers have some idea, but you have these new coaches come in. They don't have any direct experience with Tyron Hopper. They'll get what Matt LaFleur tells them. They'll get what Brian Gutekunst tells them. But the Packers linebackers coach is gone too. So it's not even like they can go to Sean Duggan and be like, so tell us, what's the deal at that position? No, they can't do that. So I think they have to find somebody that either knows the deal or that could get up to speed pretty quickly. It's why I've mentioned Demario Davis. I think Nakobe Dean makes sense. I think Matt Milano makes sense. There are some lower down the totem pole. Matt Milano, not on any of these top 100 player lists. Tremaine Edmonds probably would be. There's other linebackers out there that are potentially available for Green Bay. And, we'll see what they cost. I do think that the cost could be brought down by the fact that this draft is really good. And teams might just not be in the mood. They might not have the appetite the same way. That's useful for the Packers when it comes to trying to fill a need position for them. If you look at that top 100 list, Justice Mosqueda and the boys at APC have put together a composite list of all the lists that are out there, the top free agents. Devin Bush on that list had a really good season last year in Cleveland. He can really run, former pedigree, but I don't think is going to have the most robust market. He could make sense if they want to move linebacker to play next to Edrin Cooper, if he's going to move to Mike in particular. If what you want is someone, and we've talked about this, if edge is going to be the dime linebacker, when you just have one dime linebacker on the field, someone like Leo Chenal, again, not just because he went to the University of Wisconsin, he is that downhill run-stuffing linebacker that you can play on early downs. Quincy Williams is an interesting name to me from the New York Jets. Caden Ellis is a really good player. I kind of expect him to be back, but we'll see what the financial situation is. There's plenty of good players out there. The question is, what is the appetite for the Packers? What is the number at which it makes sense for them to say, okay, we're going to invest in you? You're going to be the guy that gives us the backstop. Do they want a backstop? I have floated the idea that, hey, get a backstop and then find someone in the draft to develop. Well, do you want to pay $8, $9, $10 million for someone who's really just a backstop? Or do you want to pay $8, $9, $10 million to someone and they're going to be the guy, and then you're going to draft someone maybe later in the draft, even early in the draft, who is really more likely to be that player for you in 27 or 28? Well, that's going to be relative to what you think the player you sign can give you in the near future. If you're going to sign an older player, someone like Matt Milano, that's for like this year and maybe next year. If you sign Nakobe Dean, who's 25 years old, he could just be the solution for you. You put him with Edgerrin Cooper, they're going to fly around and they're going to make plays and they're going to do all kinds of fun stuff, assuming Nakobe Dean's on the field. And then you use a pick on a linebacker who can play for the 6 to 8 games a year that Nakobe Dean doesn't play. That's not a bad option either. So as free agency opens and the tampering period opens next week, and then the new league year opens officially, and we can pretend like the tampering period didn't happen and that, even those discussions happen magically on the first day of the tampering period. And yeah, we know the deal there. But the Packers need to get a linebacker. This is a deep free agent class at linebacker. This is a deep draft at linebacker. You're going to come out of this offseason with 2. And I wouldn't be surprised if that does happen, if the Packers do find someone they really like in free agency and they make the numbers work and all that stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if the Packers traded Isaiah McDuffie to the team that I want to talk more about next on Locked On Packers. It's tax time, but for a lot of us, the old way of doing taxes is, well, a lot. Trying to book an appointment that's not the most convenient. Sitting in a waiting room with a stack of papers. Emailing back and forth and wondering if you're really getting what you need. But this year, you're getting a major upgrade. Intuit TurboTax now has in-person locations nationwide. You can meet face-to-face with a real tax expert, and your documents get uploaded straight to the TurboTax app on the spot. And just like that, you're done. Your TurboTax expert works to get every dollar you deserve, while you get real-time notifications as you go about your day. It's the relief of walking in and meeting a real person and walking out knowing that your taxes are being handled the right way. Head to TurboTax.com/local to find a store near you and book your appointment. We talked about the prospect of trading Elgton Jenkins. And I think there are plenty of teams out there that would be willing and able to do that, that would have the appetite to do that. But I was thinking more about it, and I was like, okay, who has something that the Packers could potentially want? And I'm not just talking about draft picks, because they're not going to get a first-round pick for Elgton Jenkins, not at his age, not at his price. So who could want Elgton Jenkins more than anyone else? And there is a perfect fit of institutional knowledge of Elgton Jenkins, need at offensive line, and something valuable to give up that may be too much of a luxury for that team to afford. John Eric Sullivan was in the draft room when the Packers took Elgton Jenkins. Jeff Hafley was on the staff in Green Bay when he saw just how valuable Elgton Jenkins was. In the locker room, on the field, when he went down, how that impacted the offensive line. And that Miami Dolphins team, their offensive line is a hot mess. Now they have a center, but Elgton Jenkins' best position in the NFL has been guard. And it's not that, the Dolphins don't have some contingency plans in place, but a player like Jonas Savaiinaea, who I was very high on in the pre-draft process, was not a John Eric Sullivan draft pick. He is, as of today, the likely starter at left guard for the Miami Dolphins, at least according to our lads and some of the other people who do this for a living online. I can't pretend to keep up to date on the depth charts of 32 NFL teams. It's hard enough to keep up to date on the depth chart of one NFL team. Elgton Jenkins would be a material upgrade, and he is under contract in 2026. You could extend him if you wanted to. But worst case scenario, he gives you a year to evaluate the rest of your offense, and you move on from Tua. You figure out what comes next. Maybe you sign Malik Willis. I don't know if that makes sense in Miami, given what they're going to have to eat with Tua and that money. But the player I had in mind for Miami to send back is Devon Achane. And the thing about Devon Achane is, First of all, he plays running back. And second of all, the Miami Dolphins are not going to compete anytime soon for anything. And he is going into the final year of his contract. This is going to be his 4th year in the NFL. He is, a former day 2 pick, so he doesn't have that 5th year option. And he's one of the most explosive runners in the NFL, coming from a system that shares plenty of DNA with what the Packers do. Achane is the perfect complement to the punishing style of Josh Jacobs. And you could use those guys together in all sorts of interesting ways. Oh, the Packers don't have a gadget player to replace Jaden Reed. Can I interest you in De'Von Achane? One of the most dynamic players in the NFL with the ball in his hand. It does not make sense for the Miami Dolphins to pay De'Von Achane. For what? To do what exactly? To go where? And yeah, I mean, like, if you have good players, it makes sense to pay them. But for what? This team is not close to competing right now. And I know teams don't like to admit that, but if you're John Eric Sullivan and you're going through the pain of moving on from the Bradley Chubbs and the Tyreek Hills of the world, do you want to, in your first year as general manager, want to commit major money to a running back who's 5'9", 191 pounds, and is predicated on explosiveness? Is that what you want to do? If you're the Packers and you're chasing a Super Bowl and you're trying to find that explosiveness, it makes sense. And then Josh Jacobs in a year or 2 years walks out the door. You give De'Von Achane that money. That works for the Packers. Imagine all the speed potentially on the field if you could put Achane, Watson, Reed, and Golden on the field together. You put Savion Williams in the backfield with Achane. I mean, that is sexy. That is like, hold on, Matt LaFleur can't get up from the table right now. He needs a minute. Like, that's what that offense could be. And, maybe it's not Elgton Jenkins. I don't think you could get it done for just Isaiah McDuffie, but Isaiah McDuffie is someone that Jeff Hafley loves. The Dolphins need linebacker help. What about Rashawn Gary? If the Packers are going to trade Rashawn Gary, why not to someone who coached him, who was in the room when they drafted him, believes they could get the best out of him in that Miami Dolphins team? They just, like I said, they moved on from Bradley Chubb. They could use some pass rush juice. And you're giving up a player who is way more valuable to Green Bay in the long term over the next 3-4 years than he is to the Miami Dolphins. Because what is Achane doing for you now? Especially at cost. For the Packers, he is helping them elevate their offense to go chase a Super Bowl. In much the same way that, like, Saquon Barkley is worth the money to Philadelphia in ways that he's not worth it to other teams, in ways that Derrick Henry over the age of 30 is worth it for the Ravens in ways that he wouldn't be, even as just a good a player, was not worth it to the Tennessee Titans. They were like, we know we're going to suck. Why are we going to pay a running back in his 30s now? Achane's not in his 30s, but still. Clear the decks. Clear the books. Don't pay for running backs if you're the Miami Dolphins, and send Achane somewhere where he can help them win a Super Bowl. And it's not even just like a, hey, buddy, like, let's help each other out here. It's not even that. It doesn't make sense for the Dolphins to spend big on a running back. It could make sense for the Packers. And the Packers have things of value that they could offer to Miami. By the way, Rashawn Gary would be much less expensive in Miami because of the signing bonus money, because of that stuff. They could rework that contract. Same thing with Elgton Jenkins. They could extend Elgton Jenkins as soon as she shows up and way reduce that contract. So this makes sense for everybody. Let's call it in. Let's get it done. And I hope that this doesn't get Friday news dumped. And, we have our Friday news dump show. We'll be able to talk about it. But I hope that this does not get Friday news dumped and like Rashawn Gary gets traded or Elgton Jenkins gets cut. And, we wasted our time talking about this. But this is an interesting conversation, to me at least. And I want to throw it at you. So I mentioned the Friday news dump. 12 Central Time will be live on our YouTube channel, answering your questions and answering the questions from the Everydayer. So if you're not part of the Everydayer Club, why not? Why not? Get Locked On Packers ad-free and be part of the group chat. Go to lockedonpackers.supercast.com for that. Plus, you get the show ad-free. Come on. Why wouldn't you want to do that? We'll be back on Sunday as well to get you ready for the legal, oh my God, it's so stupid. The legal tampering period. And then the start of the new league year, which means free agents. I think we'll by Sunday for sure, we'll have cuts to talk about. Packers are now cap compliant, but they need space to maneuver. They don't technically need the space until like April, until they have to start signing draft picks. But you assume they want to go out and do some things. No, they have money they can move around with Micah Parsons, money they can move around with Jordan Love. They have other money where they could do some maneuverings. They could just keep Elgton Jenkins. Like we've seen the Packers with Ted Thompson wait with veterans until the very last minute and then just cut them right before camp because they couldn't get what they thought was, fair value. And they said, okay, well, we tried our best, so we're going to cut them. I would rather get what you can while you can get it versus risking losing it for nothing later, but I'm not the GM. Subscribe to Locked On Packers wherever you get podcasts. Apple Podcasts. If you know, you know on that one. Spotify, Google. Follow me on the social medias. All the social medias, we're there. Clips on TikTok, clips on YouTube, clips on social media, clips on Twitter, Blue Sky. Go subscribe to us over there. Plus, on video, we send you to the first ever 24/7 national NFL YouTube channel. On audio, make your second listen Locked On NFL Draft so you can stay Locked On Packers.